Hello everybody, let's take a little look over the camera. We're going to look at some useful dials and this is going to help us understand how everything works. The first thing we're going to look at is the on-off switch. We can simply flick the dial backwards and forwards here and turn the camera on and off. In the middle here we've got the shutter release. We can press this down to take a picture. Now if we look at the mode button here, we can see that if we hold this down, this is going to allow us to change what mode we're shooting in. So we've gone through from programmable to shutter priority to aperture priority, and then we're back to manual again. When we're learning, I recommend using manual. This will make sure you've got control over everything and you're actually thinking about what you're putting into the camera, and it will help you learn. Now if we look over to the left hand side of the camera, we can see this little button. If I press that down, it allows us to spin this little dial here. This tells us how we're going to take pictures. So if I've got it set to the S, it means we take a single picture. So when I press the shutter down, you can only hear the shutter go once. If we now change it to CL, this means continuous shooting at a low speed, so when I press the shutter down, it will take pictures but slowly. And now I'm going to set it to CH. This is a continuous high, so when I press the shutter down, it will take continuous shots at a higher speed. The rest of the dials don't matter too much at this stage. I will just mention that this here is the timer mode, so if we set this to timer and press it down, it will take a few seconds for the shutter to click. Now I've done this before by accident and I was at a job and I couldn't work out why when I pressed the shutter down it wasn't taking a picture, and then later on when I pressed the shutter down it did, and this really confused me, and the reason behind this was it was set to timer mode. For now I'm going to set it back to CH because this is what I usually shoot on. If we now have a look at the front side of the camera, we can look at the focusing. We've got three little marks here. We've got C, S and M. The C and S settings are both automatic and the M setting is manual. I would just point out at this stage that the S stands for single servo focusing, and this means before we take the picture will be in focus, so we can't take a picture that's out of focus. So I'm going to set mine to S, and I recommend using this unless you have a reason not to use this focusing mode. If we look back at the top, we're going to go over the LCD screen. This letter here is the mode we are shooting in. So at the moment we're shooting it in manual, and again if I press this and spin it around, we can see programmable, shutter speed and aperture priority. I'm going to set mine to manual for now. This number here is going to be our shutter speed. This is 1/320th of a second at the moment, and we can change the shutter by spinning the dial just down here. So if I spin this to the right, the shutter speed will increase, and if I spin it back, the shutter speed will decrease. This number here is the aperture, and we can control the aperture by using the dial on the front this time. So again, if I spin it to the right, the aperture will get smaller, and if I spin it to the left, the aperture will get larger. This part in the middle here is a really important part. This is the exposure meter. Now if I change the shutter speed to make it faster, we're going to see it's going towards the negative part of our exposure meter. This means that the final picture will be darker. If I spin the other way and have a slower shutter speed, we're going to go towards the plus sign. Moving towards the plus sign will mean that the final picture is overexposed. If it's overexposed, it will be too bright and the picture will look white. Now we can also change the exposure by using the aperture. We can also combine the aperture and the shutter again to get the exposure we like. We'll go into more detail in further videos of how the shutter and the aperture affect the exposure and other things. If we look here, this is how many pictures we've got left to take. The 1.9K means we've got 1,900 pictures. Over to the left here we can see these two marks. This is the image quality. The L means we're shooting a large picture, and the fine means it's a fine quality. This little icon here is our auto area focus. At the moment it is set to automatically focus in the middle of the picture. Okay, now if we look over here, this is where it says WB, this stands for white balance. At this level I wouldn't recommend looking too much into white balance. The white balance changes the overall colour cast of the image. With modern cameras now, setting it to the A, which is automatic, is a pretty good way to get a good picture. If we look at the icons now, we've got a tungsten bulb, a fluorescent bulb, daylight, flash, cloudy day, shadow, and the Kelvin, which is the color temperature. We also have pre-programmed. I'm going to set mine back to automatic for now, and this will mean that the picture isn't too orange or too blue. Now, our LCD doesn't automatically show us the ISO, so if we look at this button here on the left and press this down, we can see on the LCD the ISO at the moment is set to 640. We're now going to take a look at the back of the camera. Now this is an old camera, so it's a bit dirty, so please forgive me for that. This button in the middle here is the focus selector. We can press the arrows here backwards and forwards and up and down to change what we're focusing inside the camera when we look through the viewfinder. This is also useful to scroll through menus. This isn't on the back of all cameras, but this tells us what we're selecting focus wise. The bottom icon means we're selecting one thing in focus, the middle icon means we're selecting an area, and the top one means we're selecting the whole picture. This is just for this camera. If I flick this little switch here, it opens the memory card slot. We can look down here at these buttons at the side. They're all pretty self-explanatory and they'll be easy to find in the manual. And then if I press the little triangle button up here, this is our playback button. So by pressing this, I can see what I've taken a picture of, and here is the delete button. And I can use the focus selector here to flick through and look at different information such as histograms and also our settings we've taken the picture on. Okay guys, so I hope you've learned a lot in this video. Please feel free to leave comments and give me feedback, I always find this useful. Also, I've used a different mic in this video, let me know if you prefer it or not. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one.